And the topper on this. So you have to go out on the 10 to get to this place, and it's about halfway. I think it's roughly halfway between Tucson and where you would turn off to go to Tombstone in Arizona.
Ooh, I've always wanted to go to Tombstone.
Tombstone's very cool. We went there in the same day. We kept going. We went to Tombstone. But so we're going out there, and like literally every couple miles, there's another billboard advertising the thing. It's like just constantly being like thrown at you.
Oh, that's so great. I love it.
And as we're going out, we're visiting during monsoon season. So we're driving out into the middle of the desert, and there's like a thunderstorm brewing. And it's just like it could not have been more perfect.
Oh,
you know?
Man, that's so good. I've got to go to this place now. I think we could just as well segue there as we can anywhere else.
Yeah, I think we're good to start this thing out.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Purpose Driven Dude.
My name is Alex.
And I'm Brad.
And this is the podcast about dudism, probably the slowest growing religion in the world.
Based on the Coen brothers film, The Big Lebowski.
Also loosely at least based on Taoism.
Or transcendentalism, or
Stoicism,
Buddhism, or
any other ism you like, really.
As long as you're not yucking anyone else's yum, then we're cool with you.
Yep, as long as you're taking her easy for all of us sinners, I think you got the right of it. So
yeah, exactly. And I'm very excited about this episode. Actually, I mean, we're kind of doing this in the reverse order that I had hoped that we would be able to, but I mean, we're gonna get it done.
Yeah. We're actually going to cover another kind of core tenet, really, of dudism this week. Last week, or last episode, we covered the dude himself.
Yes, Mr. Jeffrey Lebowski, as it were.
And this episode, we're going to keep on going with getting right down to the dude of the matter, and we're going to cover bowling. So.
Yeah, no, I'm very pumped about this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But first and foremost, of course, we have to highlight whoever's been notably doodly recently. And I believe the task fell to you.
Yeah, so this week, notably doodly fell to me. And back to NPR. We were talking about this before we started recording, but we have been pulling hard from NPR recently.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, NPR. Well, and I think this kind of NPR is one of my main news sources personally, and I think this kind of speaks
between NPR and John Oliver. I don't really need anybody else.
Oh, my four right now really are NPR, BBC, John Oliver, and Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
That's basically my
And I throw
thing.
some Trevor Noah in there whenever I get the chance, but you know.
I watch less of him, but I do appreciate what he does. Yeah.
I just don't have cable, so I don't really get to watch The Daily Show anymore.
Yeah, same here actually. I watch Colbert and John Oliver on YouTube, so.
Yeah,
there you go.
And I've got HBO, so I just watch John Oliver every time it drops on Sunday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But so NPR is one of my favorite news sources, and they have kind of good, broad, sort of, I find usually pretty even-handed coverage, which is why I go to them a lot. So they had an article that ran, I guess earlier today. Is this today, September 10th?
I believe it
September
was,
10th. Yeah. So the headline of this article is, after Hurricane Maria, Chef Jose Andre had a crazy dream, quote-unquote, to feed Puerto Rico.
Oh, man, I love my people in the food industry.
Most
of the time.
So if you are a fan of like Anthony Bourdain or some other kind of like travel chef celebrities, you may already know the name Jose Andre. He appeared on his show a number of times. Basically, this story is about how right after Hurricane Maria, he looked at the situation going on in Puerto Rico and said, "I can do something," basically. And he's a fairly famous chef at this point. He's got a fair amount of resources at his disposal. So he went down to Puerto Rico and basically just started to set up kitchens to feed people. And his initial focus was actually on feeding medical relief personnel. So at hospitals, he basically looked at the situation and said, nobody is feeding doctors and nurses and EMTs. I'm going to start feeding them. And that's what he did. Basically, he was looking at infrastructure that was in place in Puerto Rico and trying to figure out what he could use. He said at one point they had 18 kitchens running all over the island, basically just churning out food. He noted actually it was the NBA. So he was talking about setting up a kitchen in a stadium, essentially, like a baseball stadium.
Oh, okay.
And his quote is wonderful. He says, "Everybody thinks an arena is where an NBA team plays. No, it's a lie. An arena is a gigantic restaurant that happens to have NBA players for entertainment."
Okay, yeah. No,
Yep.
knowing a few people who work for hospitality for Dodger Stadium, I think I could agree with you.
Yep, and he says it really only takes a few hours to really fully activate somewhere like that. And he was saying similarly, community centers that have kitchens or high schools that have kitchens, like these can be converted basically over into disaster relief, food prep places like immediately or very quickly at least. And that's what he did. He just looked at infrastructure. He went around and basically got the permission to do so, and just started feeding the island basically. And it's just sort of like one of these stories to come out of Puerto Rico where you see somebody who has the means go in and do something awesome. Basically, when the federal government was not doing that, essentially.
Yeah.
And he mentions that briefly in the article, how like the federal government's lackluster response was one of the reasons he decided to kind of jump into action on this one. So,
well, that's doing the Lord's work right there, as people I grew up with would say.
Exactly. And so he has a memoir coming out about this right now. That's what this article this interview is basically about. He's doing press for his book. It's called "We Fed an Island," and yeah, and the
good title.
The subtitle is "The True Story of Rebuilding Puerto Rico One Meal at a Time." So. Sounds good. I'm interested in reading it. I actually quite enjoy books by authors, books by chefs, I have found.
As opposed to books who are not by authors.
Well, I mean, chefs kind of make interesting authors. Like,
absolutely.
I really enjoyed Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential.
If you enjoyed Kitchen Confidential, you should totally check out Medium Raw as well as a follow-up.
It's been on my to-do for a while now, for sure. So,
fantastic books.
I thought that was a good way to kind of transition into this episode, and a really great kind of story, right? Someone who, was just doing right by the world.
Somebody who's actually just going out and doing good because that's what they should do.
Exactly. They're doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. God, great story.
Yeah, so I would say, Jose Andres, thank you for being particularly doodly.
Thank you.
I'll drink to
Thank you,
that.
Chef.
Thank you, Chef. And actually, this gives us a good chance to, I guess, then on a food topic, kind of transition real quick into our quick little segment.
Oh, I came up with a title for it. Just 2 oat sodas.
Oh. I was partial to Hey Man, There's a Beverage here, but
sorry.
But we usually have oat soda.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the scene at the end of the movie where his line as he walks up to the bar is just, "Hey Johnny, 2 oat sodas."
Yeah, we are usually drinking beer. I reserve the right to drink heavier or harder stuff too, though. So it's
TBA.
TBA. But for Hey Man, There's a Beverage here, or 2 oat sodas, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
We're going to highlight a couple different beers this week. So I am personally drinking a beer called Leaving for El Paso. It's an American cream ale from MacLeod Ale Brewing Company, a local favorite here in town.
Yeah, beautiful brewery here in lovely I guess it technically counts as Van Nuys that they are in, but all British style beers for the most part. But they've been branching out quite a bit lately, and I mean they were making fantastic beer to begin with, and they just keep raising the bar.
Yeah, they're notable for a couple different things they do, kind of just on rotation. They like to pull up old recipes for beer from England, Scotland, and Ireland, really, kind of all over
dating back, through the 19th century a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think last time I was there, they had a recipe from 1898 on the wall. That's pretty cool. And they also are particularly big on doing cask ale there, so.
Difficult to find in most places.
Yeah, at least outside of the UK, really.
Yeah,
so.
It's kind of making a comeback a little bit here in LA. I'm seeing more and more bars and breweries with cask available. For anybody who's unfamiliar with the concept of cask, it being that a beer that's actually fermented and naturally carbonated in the cask that is served out of. And so all of the carbonation within the beer is created by live active yeast that are actually in that cask. And so these beers are often served closer to like room temperature so that the yeast remains active while it is being served. And you just get these beautiful, really kind of richly flavored beers with these wonderful, thick, foamy heads on top of them that are just a delight to drink.
Yeah, I think it's cask ale. I think is where a lot of people get that sort of conception of English beer, by and large, of being served warmer than your average American beer.
Yep.
But it's one of the sort of things where I think, like, if you've only heard that, if you've never actually tried it, it might sound kind of weird or even gross to you. But you really have to try it to understand it.
Yeah.
It's a totally different beast. It's delightful, and you get some really interesting results. So, if you're in the LA area, or if you ever come out this way, highly recommend trying MacLeod Ale Brewing.
Absolutely. I mean, they've been a favorite of ours for years at this point. They've been around for, I guess, about a little over 3 years. I think
that's right. Yeah.
And we've been going there for 2.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
And great place that serves absolutely amazing beer, wonderful ambiance. So
yeah, they got fun stuff to do too. They do darts tournaments there. You can
lots
play
of board games.
Yep, they're
pub trivia.
Yep, family friendly too. You can go there with the whole family. You can take your dog. They're dog friendly. They always have food trucks out front, so there's always food available too. Like, it's good times.
They had yoga there for a little while too.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still doing the beer yoga, but that did sound kind of fun.
Yeah, I would have been down. But yeah, by all means, folks, go visit MacLeod Ale, and who knows, you might run into one of us.
There's actually a fairly good chance you will.
There's a pretty good chance you'll actually find one of us there.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I guess transitioning over to me, I am actually drinking. This is a little bit further from my back, my backyard right now, but it was actually a lot closer to home from where I originally came from. I am actually drinking the Tank 7 Farmhouse Ale from Boulevard Brewing Company, which is out of Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
And this is actually a beer that I have like quite a long history with, because my partner Liz is a big fan of saisons and farmhouse ale, so this is one that finds its way into the fridge quite frequently. And it's a wonderful kind of just classic Belgian style, really earthy, not hoppy or bitter at all, really richly flavored, almost wine-esque beer, and is just a real delight to drink. And packs a bit of a punch too. Comes in at 8.5% alcohol, so I might get even loopier by the end of this podcast, which is really saying something, because I'm already coming into this a little off my game.
That's quite a bit. I actually didn't mention any of that sort of stuff with this beer. So this is a much lighter. It's a 4.5% ABV. It is a tall can. It's a proper pint can, so we're looking at a 16-ounce can instead of a 12-ounce bottle.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, two very different beers from two very different breweries, but both of them absolutely fantastic, and you should patronize both establishments if you get a chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, both quality brews.
Yeah.
Well, but I guess going on from there, we can go ahead and get into our main topic of the night. Drinking beer and other adult beverages tends to play into bowling, I find. So.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I rarely, if ever, roll without a beverage in hand. I've gotten to be quite close with a couple of bartenders at the bowling alley that we've
yeah, weirdly enough, like, we haven't been there that many times, but they already know us. Like,
yeah, I guess I'm pretty easy to spot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. But,
I guess for all of the listeners who have no idea what I look like, I'm a very hairy person.
Yeah, well, I mean, we both have beards, as our kind of like podcast logo indicates. So,
yeah,
there's that to begin with. But I think like we've had some pretty good conversations with the guy, though. I guess maybe he just remembers us at this point. So.
Yeah. I mean, a good bartender usually remembers his patrons. So yeah.
Well, but I guess maybe a good place to start out this conversation is just to quickly, of course, mention, first of all, I mean, we're assuming everybody listening has watched The Big Lebowski. As we always say, if you have not, you should really pause this podcast and go watch the movie.
For whatever reason, if you are like a dozen plus episodes into this podcast at this point, you haven't watched the movie.
Yeah.
Thanks, but go watch the movie.
Or, look, I mean, at this point, we can really say, too, like, if you are picking up this podcast fresh with this episode, we're going to just assume people listening have seen The Big Lebowski. So it's behoove you to go watch it at this point.
Yeah.
Because it will make a lot more sense, because we're going to be talking about specific scenes and...
Absolutely.
But so if, in The Big Lebowski, the main characters of that film spend a good portion of the film bowling. A lot of scenes take place at the bowling alley in the film. A lot of kind of the main sort of dialogue and thrust to go and do things, kind of the mulligans of the film and everything occur at the bowling alley.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. It's very much a central motif, if you will, of the film.
Yep, and all the way down to kind of entering the subconscious of our hero, really. I mean, there's an entire sequence that is a bowling, like, porn dream, essentially.
I was about to say a bowling acid flashback, almost. Like,
yeah.
It's a very, very strange and delightful sequence.
Yeah, called Gutter Balls.
Yeah. Jackie Treehorn presents Gutter Balls.
Yeah. So, since it is such a central thing in the film, it also kind of holds a very kind of central place to the religion of Dudism.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually go on to Dudism.com, you will see that the emblem that has been adopted by Dudism is in fact a yin and yang symbol. But rather than having the one dot in yin and the one dot in yang, you'll actually see three dots symbolizing a bowling ball. And it's a thing that's just like so thoroughly permeated the culture surrounding The Big Lebowski, that it's just become, you can't separate the two.
You can't. I mean, there's a thing called Lebowski Fest, which happens every year. It kind of travels around the U.S., and it's basically a festival or convention, essentially, for fans of The Big Lebowski. It's not officially, I think, tied to Dudism, but it's a Venn diagram between the two for sure.
Yeah.
But that conference or convention, or whatever you want to call it, travels around the country to bowling alleys throughout the country.
And you also have another organization called The Dude Hates Cancer. Which is specifically a charity bowling tournament which was actually partially founded by one of the cast members, who's, God damn it, his name just escaped me. The gentleman who plays Liam.
Yeah, so Liam is the Jesus' bowling partner, kind of a more rotund kind of white dude who's,
Mustache.
Yeah, mustache. I think does he have any lines in the film? I don't know.
He doesn't actually speak at any point. He features very prominently in several scenes, and is given a name, but he doesn't actually ever speak. And all of his scenes are just delightful. My favorite being whenever his bowling partner, played by John Turturro, is going off on the dude and his team. You can visibly see this man trying not to break in the background because John Turturro's delivery is just so goddamn funny.
It's amazing. Well, we actually had the good fortune of meeting him when he was out promoting his charity.
And he was, him and his daughter are both just wonderful people, and have this charity which organizes bowling tournaments where the proceeds go to cancer research and development of potential treatments.
Yeah,
and I just can't think of a better way to bring together film fans and people who want to do a little good in this world.
Totally, yeah. I mean, if you're looking for a charity to give to, especially with the holiday season coming around, they are a very worthy one for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so bowling is sort of central to dudism and kind of the fandom and culture built up around the film. And I think it ties, before we get too far into the Taoism of it, do you want to do history or you want to talk about Taoism?
I'll go ahead and start with a little bit of history, and then we can kind of segue into the lessons that we take away from it.
Sounds good. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit then, broadly about the history.
Alrighty. Yeah, so interestingly enough, and this is something I actually did not know, which is, weird given my, love of inane trivia. So the earliest known forms of bowling actually date back to ancient Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
It was a leisure activity that was enjoyed by multiple classes across Egyptian society. There are actually artifacts of bowling balls, which were leather or cloth coverings that were stuffed with like wheat chaff. And it was a little bit more along the lines of what people will refer to as target bowling. At the time, it wasn't like pin bowling as we look at it. But yeah, like working class or lower class people would bowl with these like leather or cloth balls, and then of course like the nobles and things like that actually had porcelain bowling balls that they would use.
So just to because I don't know. So with target bowling, are you talking more? Is it almost like horseshoes, like you're aiming for a target?
A little bit, yeah. Okay. So you've got basically two different types of bowling that have developed throughout human history. You have pin bowling, which is the classic thing that you go to the bowling alley, you throw a ball down a lane, and you try to knock over a bunch of pins. And then you have target bowling, which usually has some sort of like target or jack or some kind of thing where you're basically trying to get your balls as close to that target as possible.
Okay.
And think of it a little bit like sometimes you might think of like marbles or something like that, where you're like also trying to knock other people's balls away from the target. And this includes a lot of different sports. Lawn bowling, something that happens in Britain still fairly frequently, is played like this. You have bocce, which is still fairly popular in Italy and the U.S.
Yeah, my family plays it almost at every get-together.
Yeah, and you have like the French variation on that, pétanque, which is also very popular in certain Asian countries as well. And there are so many different variations on this sport. I mean, it's been around since pretty much the dawn of civilization.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking ancient Egypt, you can't go back much further than that.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's like the Mesopotamians were pretty much the only ones that would have predated this.
It's wild.
But yeah, so from ancient Egypt, you also see the Roman Empire playing a game that's very similar that would eventually develop into bocce.
Nice.
Actually, in the Dark Ages, bowling, or a form of target bowling, was used in Germany as a religious ceremony, wherein the bowling ball actually symbolized the player hurling sin away from their life, and would happen at religious festivals.
There you go.
You see how I tied that in there?
That's good. It's a good little, nice little nod. It's like foreshadowing to where we're going with this.
Yeah, it's a little amuse-bouche, if you will. So, yeah, I mean, throughout the Middle Ages into the Renaissance and modern times, you just see, multiple societies all across the world embracing this sport in various forms. You have lots of legislation being passed throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance because, the church never liked anybody to have fun. So they naturally decided that they wanted to try and regulate the ways that people were having fun, which usually meant they're regulating the way people throw balls around.
Or gambling generally.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it was fairly common in the medieval period to bet on games of bowling. So there's actually a law that dates to 1325, passed in Berlin and Cologne, limiting bets in lawn bowling to only 5 shillings.
Nice. Although if you're playing this in what would eventually become Germany, I feel you just play for rounds. Like that's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like. A lot of the bowling traditions that we have in the U.S. actually descend more from Dutch and German influences than they actually descend from like the English influences. Because if you go to England, you see that they still primarily are playing like sort of lawn bowling sort of games.
Yeah, I mean like 10-pin bowling, like bowling that we think of here in the U.S. does exist there.
It does.
It's not nearly as common, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. Whereas 10-pin bowling, as we think of it, is a little bit more descended from there's a 9-pin version, which was very popular amongst the Dutch. And was originally developed in I believe it was the 16th century, which is something that I have not played yet, but I would very much like to, if for no other reason than it is talked about in one of my favorite American short stories of all time, which would be Rip Van Winkle.
Oh, yeah.
For anybody who is unfamiliar with Rip Van Winkle, the title character being lured into basically a spiritual 9-pins game with the ghosts of the crew of Henry Hudson.
Again, bringing back a certain religious aspect to the game.
I just recently found out in the course of my research to this that there are actually 2 9-pin bowling leagues in Texas, which are very rare just about anywhere else in the country, because around the time of Prohibition, the sport of bowling, because it was so closely linked to Germanic influences, was also closely linked in the American psyche with drinking.
Sure.
So bowling alleys were amongst the many institutions that were shut down in the course of Prohibition.
A truly dark time in American history.
Indeed. One of the worst, quite frankly.
But I mean, it makes sense, though, if you're talking, because I definitely have seen representations of this, because I've been to the East Coast a couple times to like, kind of like this sort of like, was it Alexandria? I think they have like kind of like a colonial town setup, And you see like representations of the like 9-pin variety, like kind of narrow pins with a smaller ball,
Right.
And you see it in films, like I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I've definitely seen that represented.
I actually went back and I watched the episode of The Simpsons where they go to Boston and Homer discovers candlepin bowling.
Nice.
Which is another form that kind of split off from this, where you're dealing with, in 10-pin bowling, which is the most common, you're dealing with the ball that's usually somewhere between like 10 and 15 pounds. And you've got the pins that are arranged in that triangular pattern. And there's an episode of The Simpsons where they go to Boston and Homer and Bart go to a candlepin league. And Homer's like complaining about it till he actually figures out he's really good at it, and he doesn't experience any of the like back pain or wrist pain that he experiences in regular bowling. And it convinces him that they should move to Boston.
But it makes sense, though. I mean, if you know early American history, right? So you have like a lot of Dutch immigrants, especially in what later became New York. It was New Amsterdam
and
originally.
that East Coast, Northeast area there.
A lot of German immigrants as well, yeah.
And you still see a lot of these variants. Candlepin, which I just talked about being the form of bowling, where instead of that kind of like classic bowling pin shape that you think of, you have these very narrow cylindrical pins that are frequently actually not set up by machines. You have these very traditional sort of candlepin lanes or 9-pin lanes where they're actually still set up by hand. And usually like teenagers will get jobs at these bowling alleys where they just like sit up in the pin booths, and while people are bowling, they'll just like climb down and set up the pins again for everybody.
Yeah, I can think of worse jobs as a teenager. You know?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting it's a very interesting communal sport. It's a sport that really brings people together. Which I'm maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but you know, that's one of the real beauties of it, is the fact that you have these very tight-knit communities that include multiple generations of people who are actually very enthusiastic and involved in these sports and the industry involved in them.
Oh, totally. I mean, I could just speak personally. I mean, like bowling, the town I grew up in was fairly small, and really the only form of entertainment was a bowling alley. And I learned how to bowl because my grandparents would take me and my brother, and my folks would come too, and like we would all play together. So like I really learned how to bowl as best as I can remember, really from my grandmother specifically.
Yeah.
So like it's a multi-generational thing for sure.
Yeah. There was a very delightful local news piece when I mentioned the 9-pin bowling leagues in Texas, which I really want to play 9-pins now after watching this, just because I never realized exactly how it was played, where you have this diamond pattern of pins.
Oh yeah, I've seen
with
that.
With a central one, and the whole goal is to knock down all the pins on the outside and leave the middle pin standing, which seems insanely difficult.
I didn't realize that was the goal. I've seen the pin setup before, but I didn't realize the goal is to leave the middle one standing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
It seems like it would just be one of the most difficult things I can imagine. But yeah, very much a thing that has permeated through history. I mean, notable people who have been avid bowlers being people like Henry VIII, or Henry Hudson, or Francis Drake, who helped propagate it throughout the world. James the First, Washington Irving. You have things like the Knickerbocker Alleys, which were founded in 1840. You know, the first indoor bowling alley in the United States.
That's cool. It's in New York City, it looks like.
Yes, yeah. Knickerbocker Alleys in New York City.
New York City. I can't help it. Every time I hear it, I always think of the damn salsa.
And also Bowling Green in New York City, one of the oldest public parks that is still surviving. It was specifically designed as a bowling lawn.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, bowling literally has just like a fascinating history to it that is well worth digging into for anybody who might be interested in the sport itself. And continues to be a very popular sport across the world to this day. And you know, I had mentioned earlier, you know, it being this thing that's very like a very communal sport, and something that brings people together, which I think segues nicely into
my kind of thrust of research. So yeah, well, you were kind of covering the backstory and the history and kind of the cultural implications of bowling here in the U.S. What I decided to do is I looked a little bit more closely at the kind of religious aspects, specifically how they relate to Taoism, which is really the closest like kind of formalized religion to Dudism. So my notes start with actually a line from the BBC Religions page on Taoism, which we've talked about before. Again, highly recommended. It's a really good kind of just primer on world religions. So they note that Taoism does not make rigid division between body and spirit, and thus it recognizes that physical actions have a spiritual effect. So my kind of understanding of Taoism and what I've read, basically, and we've talked about this too before, where Taoism kind of has three main parts to it, essentially, three main kind of forks to the religion. There is like the capital R religion of Taoism that's formalized, there's ritual and there's, deification of various figures in Taoism. Then there is the philosophical, which is really where the majority of Dudism lies, right? So this is like, reading things like the Tao Te Ching, or in our case, the Du De Ching, and looking at kind of the principles, a little bit more divorced from the spirituality side of things. And then there's also the physical representation of this religion, which is usually expressed through martial arts. Mm-hmm. Martial arts, primarily Tai Chi, or Tai Chi Wan specifically, although there's multiple forms of Tai Chi. Also through meditation, through like breathing practices, there's a physicality to the religion. And really, it comes right from the Tao Te Ching, really. The Tao Te Ching being kind of the root of the religion. Also, physical activity or physical representations of the religion have its roots in the Tao Te Ching. So I went through a website to look into this. I was looking up combinations of search terms online. Found a website called TaiChiExercises.com. And it's a great resource. Again, we'll link to this in the description.
So what's the website about?
Well, interestingly, no, it's exactly what you think. It is.
What's their primary focus?
Exactly what you think. They point directly to 4 different chapters of the Tao Te Ching that speak directly to the idea of like a physical expression of the Tao, or a physical expression of Taoism. And those chapters are 22, 36, 43, and 76. I specifically highlighted chapter 36, so I'm going to read a little bit of that from the Du De Ching here, because I think it also kind of gets to the bowling of it all a little bit. So I am reading the Oliver Benjamin translation here from the Du De Ching. This is the Tao Te Ching, chapter 36. So that which is stretched too far will snap back. That which uses too much power will become enfeebled. That which is built up too high will topple over. That which is overloaded with riches will soon be raided. The weak will eventually overcome the strong. This principle reveals the value of humility. Just as fish who rise up to the surface are consumed, strength, when vaunted, is vanquished. So I think this kind of speaks to kind of those traditional practices, right? Like breathing exercises and meditation and kind of martial arts that are oftentimes done slowly, right? You're looking at exercises that are not overextending you, physical activities that are not designed to bulk you up and make you like necessarily like the strongest guy around or the best fighter or whatever. The martial arts side is by and large defensive. It's usually viewed as a defensive martial art.
It's something that balances you and creates a sense of self and a sense of what's the word I'm looking for here?
It centers you. It gives you a sense of mindfulness. Mindfulness is kind of at the core of all of these activities.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you an overarching sense of yourself and a self-awareness. And I kind of feel that very much ties into bowling as well.
Absolutely. And so like I was thinking about this in terms of bowling. So, I think bowling in many ways, I mean, literally the ball rolling, but in various other ways speaks to kind of that yin yang cycle, right? Mm-hmm. Like your average kind of 10-pin bowling game, kind of rolls in these certain cycles, right? Like you roll the ball, the pins get knocked down, you may need to roll again, you may not. It's variable in that regard, and you go in cycles through this sort of activity. Yeah, and you actually highlighted the same chapter I did.
Okay.
There's a Dao Chang chapter that speaks really directly to this that I'm kind of building towards with this. But really, as with any sport, right, there's a rhythm. And with bowling, it is literally it is almost a auditory rhythm to the game.
It's a very auditory game.
Absolutely.
Actually.
I mean, yeah, every aspect of it has a specific sound to it. I mean, you can hear sounds of bowling, which, in the movie, there is literally a moment where the dude is listening to sounds of bowling.
Yeah, he's literally listening to a championship league game, but not watching it, just listening.
Yeah, which, you can do with bowling. Once you've played it once, really, you can hear those sounds and know immediately what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the things too that strikes me about bowling in this kind of spiritual sense, or kind of Taoist sense, or in this case Buddhist sense, is that it's a sport which really doesn't emphasize raw strength, right? You have a sport where really you can be really strong and that'll help you, but you can also just be really accurate. You can be really kind of nimble. You can have really good precision and finesse, and you will probably be a better bowler than the guy just hucking balls down the lane as hard as he can.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
It was always my favorite thing to do whenever I was playing Wii bowling, was to just huck the ball as hard as I could straight up so that it just bounced off the lane all the way down. I would never do that to an actual physical bowling alley.
Oh, yeah. They'd probably kick you out for doing that. Yeah. But and it kind of speaks too to the pro side of the sport too, right? If you watch professional bowling, or if you look at professional bowlers, these are not super jacked athlete types,
No, I was actually watching so there's another variation on pin bowling called duck pin. And I actually found this really fascinating video from the early 90s of these two guys playing. And actually, interestingly enough, one of them looks a lot like the dude who played Liam. But which is just so appropriate on so many levels. But yeah, no, these two guys, they just look like your average dudes that you would pass on the street at any point in time, but the skill that these two guys show in playing this game, which is again a game duck pin, is one of the ones where you have smaller pins and the smaller ball, and the skill that these two men displayed, the amount of mindful precision that they employed when they were playing in this championship was just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch pro bowlers on any variety of bowling. It is damned impressive.
As a matter of fact, I might actually force you to watch that video before we go to the bowling alley tonight.
Yeah, we're thinking about bowling after this, so that's we haven't mentioned that yet. But we actually tried to bowl earlier, but there was league play, so you gotta wait for the league. But but anyway, so I think that also kind of speaks to that kind of concept, coming back to the concept of duality, right, with Taoism. It is a balance between athleticism and technical skill, and really, as opposed to most major sports, just raw athleticism is not very nice. Raw athleticism is not going to be the primary factor of you being a good bowler. Which I think is kind of a beautiful thing. And there's another chapter before we get to the one that we both marked that I think actually kind of speaks to this as well. I've mentioned before, I've been doing a slow read through the Tao Te Ching. I've been reading one chapter a week. This is actually the chapter I'm on this week, and I think it actually kind of touches to it. I'm going to just read part of this. This is chapter 55 from the Tao Te Ching. So it starts, one who is rich in character can be said to be like a newborn baby. Snakes and scorpions will not sting him. Wild animals will not attack him. Yeah, and birds of prey will not swoop down upon him. His bones are flexible and his muscles soft, yet his grip is so strong. It's this idea, again, it's a duality thing, but there's this sort of embracing of different forms of strength, right?
Yeah.
If you're strong in character, even if you're weak physically, or you're still a strong person.
Well, it just kind of reminds me of Donnie. Mm-hmm. You see throughout the entire film, you see Donnie bowling, and in every single scene that he's in, he bowls a strike, except for, of course, the final scene in which he's seen bowling, which, spoiler alert, he has a heart attack and dies. But yeah, you see this character who is physically weak and is very timid and very demure, but at the same time, shows this incredible skill and this incredible balance in his life, in these scenes where he's seen bowling.
Totally. And I think you see that with him with all the characters really in the game, or in the movie Bowling. They a lot of them have kind of very specific kind of like rituals attached to what they're doing. You know?
Yeah, and Walter.
Totally.
Standing quietly. The one time Walter is quiet in the entire movie, just him standing holding his bowling ball with both hands with his eyes closed.
But I think like for all the different like sports or activities for the Coen brothers to have the dude do in the film, I think bowling really in the Western is the best Western equivalent to kind of the physical expression of Taoism.
No, it's perfect.
I mean, there's a meditative aspect. There is a kind of controlled breathing aspect to it. There's a repetition and ritual aspect to it. Like, it goes right down that line, really. And
down that lane.
Right down that lane, yeah. Strikes and gutters, ups and downs, as they say. So we both actually highlighted the exact same chapter of the Tao Te Ching as kind of a final note here. Do you want to go ahead and read it? I love it.
Sure.
It's very good. So this is from the Tao Te Ching.
So this is from the Tao Te Ching, and this is chapter 7, and it reads, "Why is bowling eternal? Because it rolls in cycles. Similarly, because he has no ends, the dude never fails to achieve." And really that specific part of that chapter was what I focused on.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And just really sums up everything about what we've been, blathering about for the last, however long. I haven't checked. Yeah, but yeah, embracing that duality and embracing the as you said, strikes and gutters,
ups and downs, man,
and just and allowing yourself to focus on this physical aspect of your spirituality is really, really important to me personally. Mm-hmm. I'm a person who delights in any sort of physical activity that I can take part in, mm-hmm. And it's really become something that informs me spiritually. So, this chapter just really illustrates why I think bowling is such a perfect example of what the dude should be doing, and how it just ties in to Taoism and to Dudism as a whole.
Yeah, no, it's a personal kind of mantra of mine, the whole strikes and gutters, ups and downs. I say it a lot. Anybody who knows me will know, like, if you ask me how I'm doing, there's a solid chance I'm going to actually respond with strikes and gutters, ups and downs.
Yeah, the number of times I've heard that in, like, the last 5 years has been amazing.
Yeah, like, it is oft quoted by me, but, I mean, I think it, it's better than saying, like, I'm doing okay or I'm doing all right or, I mean, I'm doing fine. Like, I just say, strikes and gutters, ups and downs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, yeah. Más o menos.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we've probably introduced it enough at this point.
No, I think so. So everybody, go out and roll a couple of frames. I mean, I think you'll honest to God find that it is well worth your time.
Yeah, grab a buddy, grab a family member, or whatever, man. Like, go down and just hang out.
Yeah,
take her easy.
And just take her easy and roll your way into the semis.
Yeah, hey man, if you got the skill,
Well, I wasn't exactly sure how to transition into getting to the due to the matter here.
Hey, if there's one thing we are known for, it is our seamless, smooth transitions.
Our seamlessly awkward transitions.
I think our listeners have come to expect nothing but the best from us when it comes to transition.
Oh, man. Keep expecting. So getting to the due to the matter fell to me today, and I sorted through numerous articles on NPR. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And this one just really stood out to me, especially given our discussion of the dude's past last episode. It really just tied in for me. So for anybody who is unaware of the goings-on in the higher echelons of the conspiracy that is called our government right now.
That's one way of putting it.
I've been watching a lot of King of the Hill, too.
It's very Dale of you. Yeah.
So we've recently lost Justice Kennedy in the United States Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Very crucial swing justice in the highest court in our country.
Right. It's a 9-judge court, if you aren't familiar with it, if you're outside the U.S. or if you're just unaware.
And there have been a lot of shenanigans involved over the last couple of years with this court, but unfortunately, it fell to our current commander in Cheeto to nominate not one but two justices in his first 2 years of office.
Right.
And there's been a lot of talk about this current nominee, which was put forward for the Supreme Court, a Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who has a history of some less than stellar decisions and opinion pieces that he has published. Less than stellar, I say, because of his history with women's rights, with minority rights,
reproductive rights.
Women's
rights.
I assume if I say women's rights that people are going to think reproductive rights, although I realize that's very white dude of me.
Yeah. Reproductive rights broadly speaking, but also women's rights specifically.
Yeah, women's rights specifically, and also the rights of many people, of many of the LGBTQ plus community. So let's just say that we here at the Purpose Driven Dude are not thrilled with his nomination.
That is putting it mildly.
And yes, his Senate Judiciary Committee hearings have been taking place over this last week, and numerous protesters, to say the least, have showed up to voice their dissent against the nomination of this incredibly horrible human being.
Yeah. It should be noted that the sad reality of it is that his nomination is fairly certain at this point.
Unfortunately, yeah. In the Senate, Republicans currently hold until November, hopefully, a 51-49 majority.
Right.
So there's not a whole lot that dissent can do about it at the moment. But in the 2 days of hearings, 227 demonstrators have been arrested for protesting at these hearings. One protester this week actually, the quote in this NPR article stated, "This is a mockery and a travesty of justice. Kavanaugh cannot be trusted." Shirts were being worn by numerous women in the demonstration that said, "I am what's at stake." Included in these demonstrators was the actress Piper Perabo, who is a personal favorite of mine. I absolutely love covert affairs, so I'm thrilled to see her taking part in the national discussion of politics and protests and demonstrations. But really, just tying this back to the dudism side of things, I am so heartened. Even given, the not necessarily great chances we have at winning this battle, I am so heartened to see so many people taking a stand and actually attempting to do something about this absolutely shitty fucking situation that we're dealing with right now. And it just reminds me that the fight's not over.
Yeah.
That we still have a chance. And, knowing that we have allies in high places and knowing that we are so many, just tells me that, this is a thing that we can continue to build upon. Man, that is a very loud helicopter.
Sounds like a jet to me, actually.
I started hearing that about 30 seconds ago. I was hoping you wouldn't fly right over us, but apparently.
Yeah, wonderful and lovely Burbank Airport is right in the flight path here. So.
But yeah, One of the many of the leaders of the Women's March from Trump's inauguration have been part of this protest, and it makes me so happy to see that the resistance to these absolutely horrendous policies and people has not lost steam.
Absolutely.
And so this really, kind of gets to the dude of the matter when we were talking about him being an author of the Port Huron Statement and the Seattle Seven.
Yeah, and occupying various administrative buildings during his tenure in college. This is a doodly activity, I think, and I think. Too, it's important to remember, and I think we've been seeing this play out a little bit too this week with the whole Nike sponsorship. With name's escaping me.
Fuck.
Too much beer. Makes
too
you
much
forget
beer.
names. Look, the point I'm trying to make here is that dissent is a truly American thing. Protest and dissent is it is a right of American citizens. It's
no matter what Lord Commander Marmalade might say. Dissent and protest are some of the most fundamentally American things in the history of America.
And they're democratic values too. I mean, this extends beyond America, but they are truly democratic values.
They're just especially prescient at the moment
Absolutely.
in America.
Absolutely. But elsewhere too. I mean,
elsewhere, many places. But it's just like in my personal experience, like this is where it has come to hit home with me. And so I'm just going to offer words of encouragement. I hope everybody who is protesting currently continues to do so. There are actually, I was very heartened to see that there were several organizations who volunteered to help those who were arrested and fined for disorderly conduct, and offered to pay their fines for them when they were detained after engaging in what is in fact a lawful protest under the Constitution. Just gonna say, it gives me heart knowing that this far in we haven't been beaten yet.
Yeah. And the fight continues is really what it comes down to.
And the fight will continue, and dudes everywhere should stand up and say, you know what, we're in this fight too, and we are able to contribute to this dialogue and to this resistance.
Totally. Well, and it's, again, truly kind of an American value, right, is that you have a voice. Like, you, as an American citizen, have a voice in this discussion. Like, it is up to you to exercise that voice. And that can take many forms. Like, if you can't get to D.C. and, walk in on a Senate hearing, at the very least, contact your representative. We say this a lot, I feel, but contact your representative. If you have a little bit of money to donate to a cause that's helping out these protesters or that is in opposition to the policies that you don't like or, whatever, do those things. Those things matter. I mean, at this point, go buy a pair of Nikes. I mean, fuck.
Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious. I did see an article, just a small tangent, that Nike sales are up this week as a result of this ad campaign.
Yeah.
Kaepernick. That's who it was. Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, Colin Kaepernick. Yeah.
The name would come to me eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sales are up.
We should do him at some point. For notably doodly. Just a random thought there.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Support the things that you are passionate, that you believe in. It's an American value. And again, truly a democratic one. As well.
And I was scrolling through the article trying to find the Center for Popular Democracy is the primary organization who is helping with the fines of people who are arrested during these protests. So if you want to give to them, go for it.
Cool, man. Well, sounds good to me.
Yeah. So all the people who are still protesting in D.C., power to you. I realize that maybe we're fighting a losing battle at this point, but at the same time, thank you so much for fighting it. You are heroes and you are patriots.
Well, and I forget who said the quote, but it might have been Obama, or Obama might have paraphrased it anyway. But it was the idea that kind of the long arc of history tends towards justice, like. And I think that'll be something that'll play out here. We're in the middle of a particularly dark period, but you got to have a little bit of optimism out there. I mean, this is weird coming from me. I am not the most optimistic person by a long shot. And again, people who know me will know that that's a weird thing for me to say. But like, I think broadly speaking, when it comes to social justice issues and kind of national dialogue and stuff like that, progressiveness and there's a reason to be optimistic there. Things trend towards that over time.
Let me tell you something, people. We're on the right side of history. We are, and that's just how it is. So if you are out there doing this, just know that no matter what happens today, in the end, we will win.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. It will take time, undoubtedly, but
it's going to be a hard fight, but we will win.
So yeah.
So with that, now I've gotten my bile up a little bit, and I'm ready to hurl some 15-pound balls at a bunch of pins, and just imagine that they are,
Brett Kavanaugh's face just right on the pin.
Yeah, if they painted Kavanaugh's face on one of those pins, I would bowl a 300 tonight.
Well, and this is the good thing, right? I mean, hey, this speaks exactly to why things like bowling are important, right? Like, this is a mindfulness exercise. And it's important to remember, too, like we talked about this with the dude. The dude in the film, he got angry, man. Like, he got worked up, but he was able to reset. He was able to come back to center. He was able to do things that would help him, be mindful of his emotions, work through them, process them, and then get back to his dudeness, his dudeliness.
Exactly.
So, there you go.
So with that,
we got some housekeeping, I guess.
I guess we should move on to housekeeping.
Yeah, I would like to say a big thank you to everyone for listening. Of course, please rate, review, comment, all that good stuff on iTunes or Google Play, where we're on now. All of our episodes are uploaded on Google Play now, so you can catch us there. Any feedback you give us.
Welcome, Android users.
Yes, welcome, you crazy robots. So thank you, though, to everyone for listening there. And yeah, again, any feedback that you give on those platforms helps keep us visible. It helps make us findable in like the iTunes store or the Google Play store. That feedback does help us tremendously. So if you're listening, you like what we're doing, drop a comment, drop a like.
Take a few seconds and help us out there.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate that.
You can also reach us at our Gmail account at pddcast@gmail.com.
Yep, we're also on social media. Facebook is probably the best place to reach us at this point. We're a little slow on the Twitter game. It's not my favorite place on the internet. That's putting it mildly. But if you'd like to reach us at Facebook, we are at facebook.com/pddcast.
Yep, and Twitter, you can reach us at pddcast. I do not guarantee how quickly I will get back to you on Twitter, but I check it occasionally.
Yeah, we're happy to talk. If you want to reach out to us, we're happy to chit chat with you. So
absolutely.
So yeah, and let's see. Our music is 2 p.m. Wake Up Call by Apache Tomcat
from the album Classics by Request.
Yep.
If you get a chance to check out any of Apache Tomcat's music, it's all fucking fantastic.
Yeah, man, give it a whirl.
Yeah, please, by all means. If you're a fan of punk rock, these guys are just amazing.
Yeah, man. So give them a listen. You can find their music pretty easily online. And also, we are part of Unit 24 Productions.
Yeah, and hey, is this the first time I get to say this?
It might be.
Yeah. So I have another podcast that's currently active.
Yeah, man.
It is The Zone of the Unknown. It is the podcast that I host with my buddy Jose. And we're going to dive into all sorts of like weird paranormal conspiracy theories and mysteries. From all around the world. We just dropped 3 episodes, I guess, as of recording a little over a week ago. We discussed Bigfoot. We discussed David Huggins, the alien Casanova, as I refer to him at one point in that episode, and lake monsters. And coming up this Thursday, which I guess will be the like the 13th. or something.
Something like that.
We're going to be just talking about UFOs in general, so should be a good time.
Nice.
So by all means, come and join us.
Yeah, sounds good to me, man. I know I've been listening. I've been enjoying it so far. So yeah,
thank you.
It's good times.
Appreciate that.
So yeah, and I think anything else you want to talk about?
Not really. I kind of just want to go bowling.
Yeah, we're literally about to go bowling. So this time when we say "fuck it, dude, let's go bowling," we kind of mean it.
Yeah. So fuck it, dude.
Let's go bowling.
For real.